What is up, YouTube, and welcome back to another Awesomoto vlog. I'm still getting over SEMA week. It's been about a month and I've just had such a good time. I keep reminiscing on all the cool builds that we saw out there. If you haven't already seen, go check out the last 3 vlogs. We did a review of the GX460, the new Toyota Land Cruiser, and we did a full recap of all the awesome stuff we saw there, from Rigid Industries and all of their lighting products to a bunch of different offerings from Oxbeam, the new Nissan lineup, and even a really rare Porsche 911 Dakar. So as cool as SEMA was, it's back to reality and it's time to get back to work. So this is going to be a GX460 front caliper and rotor upgrade with just a refresh on the brake pads and the rotors on the rear. So we're just going to keep those rear calipers. So just kind of go over the parts list here. I got this from Summit Racing. Total cost, actually pretty decent price. It's $328.99, and that is with two $54 surcharges, or core charges I should say. So you knock an extra $108 off the top there, so that brings it down to $220 once you send those cores back and get your refund. So $220 for a full brake upgrade and rear rotors as well, all the way around brake job. That's a killer deal. So I'll include all the parts in the description below so that you can get these yourself. Let's just dig into it. Get one of these puppies out here. Here's the caliper. So this is the front side that's facing you. So it's probably hard to tell. We'll have to do a side-by-side comparison, but there's a little bit bigger diameter here. So it's still a 4-piston caliper, so we're not changing up anything there. We're just getting a little bit bigger diameter. Now, it wouldn't be an Awesomoto install if we just put these on as is, so I went over to AutoZone and picked up some Caliper paint and some engine clear coat enamel. So we're going to do a high gloss red. So we're going to hit these new calipers with some fresh paint before we even put them on, get them looking awesome, and give us a nice touch of color down there to go along with those red coil springs we got on the Dobinson's lift kit. So it's going to give it a really nice look. I am excited about that. We're going to freshen up the back calipers since we're not going to change out those with new. We're going to freshen those up with some paint and have them matching as well. So all around, total brake refresh. So we're going to go ahead and talk about brake pads. So for the front and rear, we went with the Power Stop Evolution. So these are a ceramic brake pad. The brakes for me is something with this GX that's something that's a little bit lacking. I notice it just feels heavier and it feels harder to get stopped. I don't know if it's just a placebo effect because I know it's just such a big car. I mean, the brakes do work, but I feel like they could use some extra bite to them. So it is time for a brake upgrade. So we got those 2 ceramic brake pads, and then gonna go ahead and refresh the rotors. So these here are Power Stop rotor upgrades for the rear. So for the rear, we're just doing the same OEM style replacement. So this is the same size rotor. I'm gonna do a full clean down on these brakes just so there's a nice surface for the paint to adhere to, but overall these are not gonna need a ton of work. Just get that oil residue that's off of here. And the one thing that you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna tape with some painter's tape this inside section here, because you do not want paint anywhere in here. So just tape all that off. You want to tape off your bleed valve here, and tape off any other areas like here where you just don't want that mounting surface to have the paint on it. So other than that, everything else is good to get paint on it. So we'll have a nice easy job with the front brakes. For the rear, we're going to have a little bit more challenging of a job because we're doing a refresh on the brakes that we already have there. So we're going to want to wire brush the ever-living crap out of them. We're going to hit them with some brake parts cleaner, wire brush, and just get all that old gunk off. There's going to be tons of old brake dust on there and everything. So want to get all that off of there. So with that being said, let's just get started by hitting these with some paint, and then we'll check back in the morning. We'll start the install. You just take a garbage bag and put it over the caliper, and then you create a small hole, not a big one, because you can stretch this around the outside of the caliper and increase the hole size on the bag as you go. So this is mostly for you people who are just going to be doing a refresh on your brakes. Recommend doing this even if you're going to be changing out the rotor like I'm doing anyways. So I have everything taped up around this rubber piece here, my drain valve, and then lastly got this one down below here. And then lastly I'm feeding in some into the top here because I don't want it getting on that piston in there, so just mashing some paper towel in there, which works really well. Alright, so with everything taped up how you need, start hitting it with a light coat. Alright, so we've done about 3 coats of the red paint on all 4 calipers. So at this point we're just going to hit them with this engine enamel. This is a gloss clear coat that we're going to throw on these. It's going to give it just a little bit of an extra gloss to them. You can see there is some gloss there, and honestly I think that's probably about fine. But a little bit of extra gloss with this engine enamel will help really make them pop and shine. Alright, so it's the next morning, and I'm just going to grab these calipers here. They are covered in a really nice gloss finish here. So really with these I was just concerned about hitting the areas you can see. And the best part is you're not painting the back and getting too many issues with paint being around some of your bolts and threaded areas in the back here. So that was my method to the madness here. Choose how you want to do it. If you want to cover the backs as well, and it's just your OCD's killing you, go for it. Otherwise, no one's going to see the back side of your brake calipers. So that looks really good. Get in a little closer so you can see. It's a really nice glossy red, which really looks like it matches well with the Davidson's red, so digging that. Let's move on to the back of the GX and we'll get those rears changed. Now that our calipers are painted, and you can see, make sure you don't get paint on these, so tape those off. There's a top and a bottom, that's kind of like a gasket or a seal here that helps. That compresses whenever you squeeze on the brakes, so you definitely don't want that covered in paint. So first things first, we're going to take the brake caliper themselves apart. So you want to get your 17mm socket, and you want to hit this back bolt on the top and the bottom here to break those apart. Just going to slide that out. Keep this off to the side, and then hit this lower one down below. Alright, so now this should give you the ability to break apart the top part of the caliper from the bottom section. And this will reveal. Some may want to take this bottom and top section apart and paint them individually, and that's fine. It's just going to take you a little bit more time. The main thing I was looking for was just making sure the face of these was painted properly. Other than that, you're not going to see the rest. Really, at this point, we just need to take this lower section off, and this is also the same 17mm as was on the top. So just hit the back end of these calipers with a 17mm to get your caliper completely off of the rotor here. And I got one last one here, and these come apart very easily. Just 4 sets of 17mm bolts holding everything together, so very easy install here. Other than the paint, this would have taken maybe half hour to do in total, so very straightforward. With our brake pads and our brake pad clips, which we've painted, which is fine because those are going to get replaced with the new brake pads and the clips themselves. Alright, so for the rears, these are the Evolution Plus from Power Stop. These are the ceramic pads, and you'll see it inside of here. You've got your pads, but then you also have your metal clips that go with everything. The clips for the front side are slightly different than the clips that are on the back side here. They have this extra little W-shaped piece of metal, so make sure you get the right ones. Alright, so here's the new metal clip. Hopefully you can see how this is going together, but just kind of slide it in like so. And they clip in pretty easily just by hand. you don't want to go hitting these with a hammer and bend them all out of shape. You can just pry them on with your hands very easily and reduce the risk of bending and damaging all of your clips. So just try to be careful with that. This is where this clip needs to go into place, and so really what you do is you take the pad and you just put this clip on this little ridge like so. You can see that. And then when you go to slide it in, slide in the top side first, and then I'm just kind of reaching in and manually lining things up here. Alright, so there you have it. You've got on the lower side, you got that clip into place. Alright, so now that we got those brake pads into place, really the last thing left here is to get this old rotor off. So for this, you just want to kind of hit it with a mallet, and you want to hit opposite sides to force it to break free. Helps really well with getting things loose. There we go. Whew. There we go. So let's go grab that new rotor and swap it in. Alrighty, so here's our new rotor. Looks wonderful. As you can see, I'm already getting my greasy hands on it. And speaking of greasy hands, you want to make sure you clean the crap out of this thing and get all that factory oil that's on there to keep it from rusting and shipping. So just hit that with some brake parts cleaner and wipe it down, and you're ready to install. Alright, so this is going to go on the same way you took it off. Line things up. And, well, it went on very easily. So throw on one or two of your lugs from your wheels on there to hold the rotor in place while you install the rest of the parts, because this thing's not going to want to hold its position too easily because it's new and it's not all gunked up yet. Alright, so from here we'll put our caliper back on. Ouch, got myself. These are with your 17 millimeters on the back. Alright, so you want to just hit these back caliper mounting bolts with 77 foot-pounds, and so we hit those already, so our caliper is in place. The next thing we want to do is put the top back on, but as you can see, our caliper is an extended piston on it, so we want to press this piston back into place, but also want to do that without scratching up our new paint surface, which probably should have done this in hindsight beforehand, but we can still manage to get that done. So this kind of fits in like your brake pad would, and you just slowly compress it back in. You can see the cylinder slowly going back into place. Alrighty, so once you have things into place, you're gonna probably struggle a little bit here to get things lined up, but this little rubber grommet down below needs to line up here. Okay, that wasn't so bad. So these bolts on the top here are actually going to be a 65 foot-pound, not 77 like the actual mounting of the caliper, so just make sure you get the right torque spec on those. So overall, these look awesome. I'm such a huge fan of the way this looks. The red paint looks great. We're able to get rid of all the stuff and junk that we had painted in there before. All those clips are taken out in the pads. New rotor. Speaking of new rotor, you want to go through with some brake parts cleaner and do one last spray on this rotor and get everything cleaned up. But you want to make sure you don't spray your newly painted caliper, because that paint is not going to do so well with some fresh brake parts cleaner on it. So before we get started on these front brakes, I do want to make an announcement. If you find this video or any of the Awesomoto videos helpful to you, and you want to help support the Awesomoto channel to help bring you more videos like this in the future, head on over to awesomoto.tv, where you can pick up a bunch of awesome merchandise, some GX inspired merch there as well. Alright, so before we get fully started here, just want to go ahead and just take apart these calipers. And really, by take apart, I mean want to go ahead and just take out the pads first. So for these, very straightforward. There's a pin on the back that you just pull. There's a top and bottom one. and that allows you to pull your pin all the way through. Don't worry about these right now because we won't be using these because this whole caliper is going to get replaced. Whew, these things are rusted in there pretty good. All right, so once you have those out of there, then you can go ahead and remove these springs. Those come out very easily, so really they're going through those holes. All right, and then from here, we should be able to just pry out those old brake pads. All right, so brake pads aren't in the worst of shape. There's definitely some left to be desired with these pads in general, but not worn out nearly as bad as the backs were. So I'm assuming the previous owner might not have replaced the rears and they only replaced the fronts at some point, but not 100% sure, but we're gonna completely do away with these. All right, so on the back of the caliper here, I just hit this fitting with some brake parts cleaner just to kind of keep all the dirt from being in and around that, because we got to connect that back into our brakes. So just kind of clean this. This is the hard line here. Just want to clean this area off. I think we may even want to just take off where this connects, which is right here. I'm just going to take off this bolt so that we have a little bit more flex. All right, so that's a 12 millimeter there. Ooh, break that loose. I've got a drain pan up underneath here just so things don't make a huge mess all over the garage floor. I'm just going to break this free. Ooh, and that's barely on there with any force, so just gonna allow that brake fluid to drip out. It's gonna happen. No way to avoid it. I guess for now I'll just let it drip into that pan. All right, so to continue with the process, I'm just gonna take this caliper off, and I believe it's a 17 millimeter on the back here. Yep, 17 millimeters. Wow, actually my impact is unable to get in there, so I'm gonna go with a bigger breaker bar. All right, breaker bar's out now. Ain't no turning back. All right, so once you get this final bolt off this caliper here, it should just come right off easily. So it's really only 2 bolts holding the dang thing in. It's just getting access to them is a little bit of a pain. Whew, there we go. So take this thing, oh, chuck this off to the side, and keep your bolt because you're going to need that. Side by side is very hard to tell. Actually, no, I can see it. You can see there's a little bit bigger diameter on the piston housing, and then also the inside here you can see the the piston diameter on the inside you can see is bigger on the 470 ones, or actually on the 460 ones it's bigger. So definitely a little bit of an upgrade. Size wise, you could say that it's very minuscule looking, but performance wise, you know, just a little bit bigger diameter on the piston does actually provide a significant amount more pressure and pushing capability for that cylinder. So, you know, even though it looks like a little bit bigger, there's probably going to be a pretty noticeable difference in the improvement on the braking. We're ready to throw this thing on. So before we do so, don't mind the fact that the back of mine aren't painted, which again, you won't see that from the front. So you want to make sure you have the right caliper and you're putting this on the right side. So the caliper that you want to use is the one that has the fitting facing upwards. And for first things first, I'm going to just get this fitting in because I'm sick of this brake fluid just getting everywhere. So we'll take this front rotor off just the way we did all the others, just hammering it off. Whew, if you hit it hard enough, it'll come off like that. So good. That was a pain. That was a lot of hammering to get that thing ready. So what I'm gonna do is go over here, the new rotor, spray it with some brake parts cleaner and wipe it down. Alrighty, I'm gonna throw a lug on here, maybe two. Alright, so now I'm gonna put on the caliper. Now you got those rear mounting bolts into place, tighten things up real good here, and then you want to hit it with that 77 foot-pound like we did on the rears. So really at this point we're at the home stretch. We just got to put on, we got our packet of pins and our brake pads, and we also got some grease, silicone component lubricant, so we want to use this grease on there. Remember this on past vehicles. That little metal piece ends up just being a wear indicator, and that metal is designed to make a high-pitched squeal whenever the pads get small enough. So you want to make sure there's only 2 of the 4 pads have those, so you want to make sure you at least have 1 on each wheel. But from there, I'm going to slide the pads into place, and you want them this concave side down. Alright, so there's some weirdness going on and some differences here compared to the 470 pin situation. So, you know, you got your 2 pins like we had before, but instead of there being the pin clips on each individual pin, there's this funky longer clip thing that kind of goes through both. So I'll show you how that goes on here at the end. And the other thing in here is our rattle clip. Try to pull this out. All right, this is our rattle clip here. All right, so we do want to put a little bit of grease on these pins. So what you want to do is you want to put some of the grease squeezed out once you got one of the pieces in. Just kind of rotate it and get some grease on it. You want that to be able to slide nice and freely in there. And then put a little bit on this side as well. So for this spring, or this rattle spring here, you want to go through this hole here and the other one on the opposite corner, like so. And then you're actually going to have to pull out this thing further than I originally said. There you go. Oops. There we go. So hopefully you can see how that slid in. Zoom in a little bit more there so you can see how that goes into place. And then on this lower one, there's not a pin in this set, so I'm just going to apply some grease. Slide it through. So the last thing you want to add is this clip. And this clip's a little bit weird, and I'll show you why. Really, this has to go through this hole in the center here, but before it goes through that hole, you need to go into each one of the pins. And so you have to rotate the pins to kind of get a good enough orientation for them to fit through. So I got the clip through both pins, and then really what you do is you stretch this back, angle it in, and it clicks into place like so. So now we are good. So we're going to repeat the same thing on the passenger side of the vehicle, then we're going to get to that bleeding job. Alright, so it's time to bleed the brakes. We probably have some air in the lines from disconnecting the brake lines for these calipers. If you're just doing a regular brake job, you're not doing the upgrade, and you're not actually disconnecting that brake line, you probably don't need to do this step, but it is good to bleed those brakes occasionally and get some of that old fluid out of there. We got this brake bleeder kit. I got this over at O'Reilly's. This is from Performance Tool. And what I like about this is it has a check valve in this bleeder bottle. So the check valve, what it does is it allows brake fluid to come through one way, but air does not come back through the other direction. And it's got a magnet on it, which is pretty awesome. I don't know why I'm getting excited over a magnet, but I am. What this does is they call this a one-person brake fluid bleeding kit. So the cool thing is you can put this little magnet on here and you can magnetize it to things. They say you want to attach this and have the magnet where the bottle is above where the bleeder is. All right, so I'm at the passenger front side of the vehicle, and you may ask yourself, Eric, why are you at the passenger front? This is something that you need to start at the back of the vehicle. Well, I thought the same thing as well, and then I looked it up, and the service manual says that you need to start at the passenger front, then go driver front, passenger rear, and then driver rear. So I'm going to follow that procedure just because that's what they say. So what I'm going to end up doing here is, you can see I've got the bleeder bottle sitting up higher than where the bleed is, and I've got this offset wrench which has a 8 and 10 millimeter on it. So I'm going to put that on over the bleeder valve first, just because you want that in its place, and then you want to hook up this hose. So the cool thing is because this has the one-way check valve, we're not going to have to worry about any issues with just going into a plain bottle. This has the nice check valve for us, which is going to make it easier on ourselves. One key thing is you need to have the GX470 ignition in the on position. If you do not have the vehicle in the on position, you're not going to properly bleed your brake. So you want to make sure you use .3 brake fluid. So I'm using a full synthetic Prestone .3 brake fluid. And you just want to make sure you have your brake reservoir just topped off, because you're going to be draining some of that fluid out during this process. So what you want to do is you want to open up this bleeder valve, and once that bleeder valve is open, we're going to go into the vehicle and we're going to start pumping the brakes, and we're going to do about 5 good hard pumps of that brake, compressing it down to the floor, and we're going to see fluid come out. You guys will be down here, so you'll get to see that. I won't be able to see it because I'll be up in the vehicle. So we'll do that about 5 to 6 times, and we'll repeat that process for all the brakes, going passenger front, driver front, passenger rear, driver rear. So let's get started and loosen this up. And hopefully what we see is fluid coming up through the hose into our bottle, and we get all of our air pushed out of the system. Alright, so I have no idea if any fluid came up. Oh, actually, yeah. I see one air bubble there. I can hear the pump going when I press the brakes in, so it's definitely working. So let's just do a couple more. 5. Let's do 6, one for good measure. That was a total of, I think, about 12 on this front one, so hopefully that got most of it out. All right, that looks awesome. Not sure if you can see, but there are no air bubbles at all going through this. Wow, I almost completely filled up that bottle up there. So I'm gonna tighten this up. It looks like we got all the air bubbles out. That is awesome. This is definitely something I highly recommend purchasing. Makes the brake bleeding process so much easier to do by yourself. All right, in order to not bore you to death, I'm gonna repeat this process on all 4 brakes. So I'll check in after that. We're gonna do a break-in process on both the pads and the new rotors, and just give them a little bit of a endurance test and a stress test to see, how everything is working. I somehow seem to take forever to post these videos these days. And in general, most of these just take a while because there's so much setup involved. I mean, Friday night we had to paint the calipers and let that dry overnight. And pretty much a good chunk of yesterday was consumed by the install process for these brakes. So here it is Sunday, and the whole weekend's gone, and I'm here still filming the same video. Gosh, I devote way too much time in my life to making these videos. So hopefully you guys appreciate these. and you're getting some value out of it. All right, so it's the next day and I am driving to a location where I can do some serious braking and not have a ton of traffic lined up behind me wondering why I'm slamming on my brakes all the time. So we're gonna drive to an area where I know that I can get away with driving kind of like an idiot because I'm gonna be slamming on my brakes 30 times in a row. The power stop pads that we put on the GX, they have a bedding procedure of doing 30 miles per hour down to 5 and doing a 30-second rest in between doing that again. And then what you do is you repeat that entire process, not 10 times, not 20 times, but they're saying 30 times they want you to go do this. So as you can imagine, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, where the heck am I gonna go and slam on the brakes 30 times in a row without somebody getting mad at me? So I'm off to a location in a rural road where I know that I can goof off a little bit and slam the brakes on a bunch and do this bedding procedure 30 times. And I'm gonna bring you along for the ride. All right, so we got 30 of these, 30 miles an hour down to 5. Let's just get started with it. So we're climbing up to 30. Right as I get around this bend, I'm gonna hit the brakes, get ourselves down to 5 miles an hour. And here we go. Down to 5. And we're going. And we wait 30 seconds roughly between each one. There's 10. 20. Huge improvement in braking. Huge improvement. And there we have it. 30 intervals of 30 miles per hour down to 5. And that is the completion of the bedding process. I highly recommend doing this and following the instructions because the bedding process is super important, and it also is going to help you dealing with issues with warped rotors in the future. So just do this, you know, within the first day of installing the brakes, and you'll be glad you did it. You'll see an improvement in the braking as they heat up and you really start to get that compound exposed and wear into those brake pads the way they're supposed to be and break them in real good. The next step in the process here after you bed the brakes is the key thing you want to do is you want to pull over and you want to put your car into park and keep your foot off the brakes. The key here is you want to keep your foot off the brakes and you don't want to have the brakes on or parking brake. Just put the car in park and allow those pads and rotors to cool off because they're hot from that bedding process and you don't want any warpage to occur or any sort of weird hot spots on the pads. All right, so while we let the pads cool down, I want to give you my first impressions on how I feel about these brakes. First off, massive change in the braking performance. I'm able to stop so much faster. I can feel the confidence in the braking. I feel like I can stop in much shorter time frame than I could on the GX before doing this upgrade, which I really wish now in hindsight I would have done some like 50 to 0 or 50 to 30 and did some timed intervals of that so that I could give you a little bit more of an exact calculated number on that, because I'm an engineer and it's all about the numbers for me. So really wish I would have done that because it would have been nice to show you an actual quantified reasoning as to why they're better. But since I don't have that, all I can do is go off of my feel on my foot and just in general the experience of driving this car for 3.5 years now. These pads are the same pads I've had on it for 3.5 years. They look like they were ready for a change when we took them off, as you saw. So with that, I can say with confidence, the 460 upgraded calipers, I can feel a huge difference in the way the front end is kind of biting and leaning forward. The fronts are just grabbing so much tighter. It may be the pads with the calipers and the new rotors, but just in general, the whole front of the vehicle wants to lunge forward and stop much faster when I slam on the brakes, which it feels awesome. It's starting to feel like when I slam on the brakes in the M4, like it really wants to come to a stop. So the braking itself just feels so much better. There's way more bite. The backs feel good too. Overall, the braking performance is just massively improved. And I'm very happy with this upgrade because this was cheap. I mean, at the beginning of the video, I think I said $328 for all the parts, but that was with two $54 core charges. So Summit Racing will be getting my old cores, which is the rotors itself. They want you to send the rotors back, and they will take and refund you your money for those core charges. That's because they recycle those materials. So when I send those cores back, we'll get an extra $108. I said it before and I'll say it again because these numbers, for me, I just think it's crazy. $220 at the end of the day, and some labor on the weekend of you doing this job yourself. You can follow this video. This is just such an awesome bang for the buck. 220 bucks to get some huge improvement in braking and some nice red calipers. It's a pretty good deal if you ask me. So I know there was a lot going on with this video, and I may not have answered everyone's questions. So if you do have questions about the video, hit me up in the comment section down below. I strive for all of my videos, even if it takes me a week or two. I strive to reply to everyone's comments. So if you do have any questions about the install, just comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So I guess at the end of the day, the real reason you're watching this video now is you're probably trying to answer the question of, does doing the GX460 upgrade caliper setup on the GX470 provide improved performance and braking, and also does it fit at all? So you've seen both. Yes, it fits, and also yes, it's worth it. It is such a cheap upgrade. And it is really that. It's an upgrade. They're bigger pistons on there, and you can feel a huge performance difference. Even though it's a small size increase on the pistons, you're feeling a huge difference in the way it bites. And the stopping performance is totally worth every bit of the $220. So for that price, it's really hard to argue an upgrade, which is such a economical choice for upgrading your GX470 brakes. It's really cheap compared to some of the performance brakes that I've done in the past. If this video or any others from the Awesomoto channel helped you out in any way, and you want to support the Awesomoto channel, head on over to awesomoto.tv, where you can pick up yourself some nice Awesomoto branded t-shirts. This t-shirt, we got the GX470 on the back with the Build Something Awesome. So if you want to help me out and help support the channel, all proceeds go back into the channel to bring you more videos like you've seen today. All right, so with that, I'm gonna end things here. I'm gonna go drive around and enjoy these new brakes. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.